hello there, humans, bees, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka Blitz, and I'm back today to have a chat to you about a tank that has just recently come into the game. This is the IS-5. It's a reward tank for the clan supply. You get it to level 10, you whack up at 1.2 million clan XP, and Bob's your mother's brother, and you can buy this thing for 1,500 gold. It's not a freebie, you do have to buy it, but for all that, it's drastically reduced from all the other tanks you've seen at this tier, at this price point. Incredibly reduced, in fact. And I'll break the bank right off the bat and say I think it's a better tank than the IS-3 Defender. I think it's a better tank than the IS-6. And I think it's a better tank than, well, I guess the IS-3. It's got better armor than the IS-3. Maybe I'd say it's a better tank than the Glacial too, but by the same token, I don't think it's better by a margin of a large degree. I think it's right in the same ballpark as those tanks, and it fulfills the same role, if not a little bit more successfully for mine. Now, this is a Patreon-sponsored post. For some of those who don't know, Patreon is how I keep the doors open here, and a little bit of exciting news as well. I'm ducking over to visit the wife's in-laws, or the wife's family, and my in-laws in June. And it all happened a little bit quickly, but hopefully I'm going to be able to get to Tankfest and check Bovington out. And maybe I'll chat to Wargaming and see if I can't arrange for some time there to say hello to everyone and meet some people. Maybe even say hello to such luminaries as Skate Extreme, Martin Dogger. You might have heard of those kids, they're YouTubers as well. And that would be great fun. So if you are going there, make sure you keep your head out for a very tall, fat Aussie bloke running around with not much hair, and that'll probably be me. There's not many. Most Australians are very, very good looking, have long flowing locks, and are incredibly well built. Just look at 48-ton Ruckus. He's about 6'8", has the abdominals of a washboard, and ladies just love a bit of Ruckus. They swipe right for Ruckus in Perth all the time. So what's good about this tank? Well, it's bloody mobile. Now, I'm going to run through the build. I'm going to run through the equipment layout and everything. Tell you what I think you should be running on it and why, and what its vital statistics were. Or are. No pun intended there if you're an Obelix and Asterix comics reader. You might know. Oh, God, don't worry. I'm an old man. Have another sip of coffee. Have a look at this tank. This is the IS-5 next to the IS-6. You're going to see some similarities there. Have a look at the actual chassis. The really sloped sides, the very strongly sloped rear armor, the very low profile, the tough to hit hatch areas. There's a lot of those commonalities. What it also has at the front is an armor profile that is stronger than an IS-3 Defender's. From what I can gather, it's just as tough as it gets frontally. You're not going to bounce tier 9 heavies and mediums all the time, but that's not part of the pen. And you can see here, I'm going to go up slightly. See this upslope? That T-54 doesn't have a whole lot of gun depression, 5 degrees in fact. So when I move just slightly up this slope, it makes the angle on my armor really go up, and it makes it very, very bloody red for this poor old T-54, and it makes it much harder for him to pen. Now, the real joy of this tank is the blend of mobility, armor, and damage. It's got all those things in spades. If you already have like the IS-3 Defender or the IS-6, you can get by without this tank. Don't get me wrong. If you're a collector, it's a great tank to get, and it could actually be quite hard to get a hold of because you're going to have to get clan supply to level 10. And I can tell you right now, running around my Grunt Boys, who are an exclusive little club all to themselves, we're lazy as buggers and we aren't anywhere near level 10. I think we're still working on level 9, and it's not going up very quickly. You can see I'm caning along here at 40 kilometers an hour. The tank actually runs the 122mm D25TA. No, sorry, what am I talking about? It does, but the reason I find that interesting is it also has the same gun as the IS-2H. And you might remember the 122mm because that's an IS-6 has two 122mm. And the IS-3 has the 122mm BL9. So you start to get the idea that it's got that kind of a gun, and it's got that kind of a gun handling characteristic all about it. You've got, and this is fully buffed up, running all your gear, 5 rounds a minute, 400 alpha. The pen's really solid, 221 millimeters of pen on your APCR, which you have as premium, and 270 millimeters of heat on your tank, which is excellent as well. And that's important to remember too, because it feeds in a little bit to some of the equipment choices that I'm going to be making when I show my build at the end of this video. Your dispersion is typically Russian. Like, this is going to be another one of those tanks where you go, I swear I pointed at that tank, I pressed the button, why didn't it go in? But for all that, if you give yourself the opportunity to put shots in and get up close and personal, it will do the business. Now, you have 201 millimeters of frontal armor plate. I don't know the sloping on it, but it's an awful lot, and it's got an awful lot of bouncy on it. Your traverse in your turret is 28.78 degrees running the build that I run, and the traverse speed on the tracks is 33.97. You can see Camiro trying to sneak in and grab that kill on the ISU 152. Very, very cheeky of him indeed. The view range, 275 meters, and the aim time is a whopping great 5.9 seconds. You can see here when I'm brawling, it's very, very similar to the Defender, both in terms of the gun and the gun handling, and also in terms of the actual traverse numbers and the feel of it in a brawl. In fact, the different part about it I found was just the soft stats. I think the Defender has slightly better soft stats, but not by much. Very, very, very close, and you'd have to be a very, very finely tuned instrument of tanking justice to spot the differences when you're driving it anyway, that is. Your high explosive, 500 damage on that. If you can get it in, it's 61 millimeters of pen, 400 on your alpha, as I mentioned previously. So you can side scrape in this, much like the Glacial. It's got that same kind of really strong side armor, but it's also a little bit of a cross with the IS-8 in that it's very, very trollish, your side armor. I found it was incredibly effective as an assault tank, getting up close and personal, and if you run it with a Defender or an IS-6, it's a beastly combo. It'll do very, very well for you. I mean, a lot of people will say, oh, another Russian tank, you know, Russian bias. It's already in the game. This tank in this model is already in the game. I mean, it is a well-known common factor. The IS-3 Defender or the IS-3 or the IS-6 or the Glacial, these style of tanks are pretty well known, and they're really, really handy. Don't play it at the back. It's bloody horrible. You'll be wasting your time. It really doesn't respond well to sniping. It's not much of a gun handling tank. It's got a fair whack of hit points. It's got a very, very nice armor profile. And if you know how to use it, it's got a tremendously intimidating style of play. You really want to get up close and nasty. And I'm going to do the build out now. Before I forget, the build out. I'm going to show you my loadout now, my equipment loadout, and just let you get an idea on exactly how oh, look at that. Talk about unnecessary ammo rack. 396 hit points, less than an average roll, and we get the ammo rack. Don't you scream. You don't want to waste them on that. You want to save them for the good ones. Hang on. Let me get my loadout going on. Right. Well, here we go. This is not the IS-5. That is the IS-2 SH. IS-2 the silent assassin. This is the IS-5, and let's have a chat about the equipment loadout. I'm running RAM on it because, as I mentioned, the actual gun has brilliant penetration. 221 and 270 odd is heaps of pen. If you need to pen anything, you can switch to heat on that, and that's not an issue. Protect the modules, 10% of the protection of the engine, transmission, and ammo rack, and fuel tank durability. That's just something I prefer to the crew protection and damage from ramming. Optics, which I run on every tank. I'm a real big fan of optics. This was tough one because you're running APCR. Over distance, it loses a lot of shell velocity, so that is actually supercharged, is helpful on the second tier, first one across, combat power. But you don't want to be doing much of your work at range. It's just not a good gun for that. You don't have the damage per minute numbers for it. You don't have the dispersion or any of those things. So I'm going with gun lane drive, to minimize the aim time as much as possible. This is one of the things I really, really like about this new patch, is the ability to run both gun lane drive and vertical stabilizer at the same time as a gun rammer. So you've got your guns absolutely maxed out in terms of performance, the way you want it, and then you can move on to the rest of your kit, which is pretty cool. The second tier of Vitality, I'm running plus 5% to hull and turret armor. This is an absolute walk-up start. You don't want to be running the hit points for really anything. I'll just clarify my position on the hit point thing. I'm a big believer in the fact that I would take improved hit points. I think hit points are great, but it's got to be worthwhile. 80 hit points for this tank, or for any tank that's got 1,550 hit points, is just not enough. Whereas the chance to bounce a key shot is more important for me. And especially on a tank with good armor, it's really, really easy to choose. But on a tank with poor armor, I often find that you will get targeted with high explosive by good players. And that extra bit of armor gives you a much better chance of not copping a full roll of HE. I also understand that hit points is a bonus, blah, 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 blah. I just think I go for really high ceiling, really, really low floor. And the high ceiling on armor is that it will bounce a full shot. And that's a lot of damage to miss, that extra 5%. It's just huge. So I'm going for the maximum potential, less than the stayed and steady sensible shoes kind of option, which is, you know, an extra 50 hit points on a KV-1S rather than extra 5% armor. Improved control is the must for me with most heavy tanks. A lot of heavy tanks have high top ends and they get there slowly, but it's not so important that they get there that quick. The tanks that are going to give you trouble in the really big slow stuff is your mediums and lights that can get around you very quickly. And especially when you angle a lot in a tank like the IS-5, when you're angling your tank an awful lot, you want to be able to move it very, very quickly to the targets that are coming in. Now, it's got a pike nose, so you don't want to be over-angling that nose. But if you can side scrape off things in open ground, being able to angle and traverse very quickly is a must. The top of combat power, you've already seen the vertical stabilizer. The top of vitality, plus 25% to repair speed. If you've got that, the tier 6 combat perk, robustness, it'll give you 24% more, and then you run a preventative kit in your provisions area. That'll get you up to 60% to repair speed of modules and stuff. So winner, chicken dinner. That's a lovely thing. And then consumable delivery system. I do a lot of brawling in this tank, and so I've gone to 10% to the overall cooldown speed because I use 3 active consumables. I'm running big kit, little kit, and adrenaline. So those things being on a smaller cooldown is much better for me because obviously being able to repair an ammo rack, being able to repair a track, being able to heal a crew member and stay in the game is pretty important when you're a big, nasty, heavy tank. And getting stuck in one position is generally death. When you're able to angle your armor to mitigate damage, being immobile is horrifying. There you go. That's the IS-5. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed making it. I'm going to be running the IS-2 over the next wee while. I've got the very, very sexy camo on there. I, however, do not have a whole lot of spare parts, so I'll have to pick one spare part for that. I don't even have enough to get to the second level, so not to worry. We'll be running that one naked as the day it was born. I'm Bushka on Blitz. Look after yourselves. Stay safe on the battlefield. And as always,